11:45 p.m. My phone lit up the dark room with a single notification. A forwarded bill from the Zenith Lounge. $15,000. The number glowed on my screen like an accusation.
Bright.
Indifferent. Heavy. Underneath it was a text from my mother, Sandra. Just put this on your card. It's the least you can do after ruining the mood with your cheap dress. A second later, another notification. A heart emoji. That one was from my sister, Tiffany. I didn't move. I sat there in the quiet hum of my home office, surrounded by monitors tracking global market shifts, hotel acquisitions, occupancy forecasts across 3 continents. Screens full of numbers that bent when I told them to. Entire cities rising and falling on decisions I made before breakfast. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I just stared. They truly believed I was their ATM. They thought my silence was permission. But silence isn't always agreement. Sometimes it's just the quiet before the execution. I didn't reply. I didn't send an angry emoji. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen hummed to life, washing my hands in cold blue light. To my family, these hands were only good for shelving books at the public library or pouring wine for my father's business partners. That's the story they liked. The version where I stayed small and useful and unseen. They had no idea these same hands controlled a boutique hotel empire stretching across 3 continents. I bypassed my work email and logged directly into my private investment backend. 2-factor authentication. Retinal scan. Dashboard loaded. I scrolled past the real estate portfolios. Past the tech holdings. Past the offshore accounts that didn't officially exist. Until I reached a folder buried deep in the archives. Family debt consolidation. I clicked it open. It wasn't just a file. It was a graveyard. There were receipts for my father's gambling debts from 2018, debts I'd bought for pennies on the dollar from loan sharks who'd been threatening to break his legs. There were my mother's maxed-out credit card statements, designer handbags she couldn't afford, consolidated quietly into a low-interest loan I managed myself. There was the lease on the luxury condo Tiffany lived in, paid for by a shell company I owned. For years, I had been the silent architect of their safety, catching them over and over again before they hit the ground. And staring at those numbers tonight, I finally asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for a decade.
Why?
The answer wasn't love. It was something far more insidious. It was the invisible chain of the survivor. When you grow up in a house where affection is rationed, you learn early that love is transactional. You start to believe that if you just pay enough, endure enough, fix enough of their messes, they'll eventually look at you and see a daughter instead of a utility. So you build your own prison, no bars, no locks. Just obligation. You tell yourself your usefulness is the only thing keeping you inside the family. You think you're being a good daughter. But really, you're a hostage paying your own ransom, hoping the kidnappers will eventually decide to love you. That $15,000 dinner bill snapped the chain. I realized then that no amount of money would ever be enough. The ransom had no ceiling. I could buy them the moon, and they'd complain it was too bright. My compassion hadn't been a gift. It had been a subscription they'd overdraft for years. And tonight, that subscription expired. I navigated to a submenu labeled Housing Allowance, Jeffrey and Sandra. Status. Auto-renew active. I didn't hesitate. I didn't shake. This wasn't revenge. This was accounting. A correction of a market error. I clicked cancel. Are you sure? Confirm. The status bar turned red. Terminated. Credit cards. Terminated. Tiffany's car lease. Terminated. One by one, I turned off the lights in their financial lives. It took less than 5 minutes to dismantle the safety net I'd spent 6 years weaving. When I was done, a final number flashed on the screen. $5.2 million. That's what they owed me. And that's what I was going to collect. I closed the laptop and turned around. In the dim bedroom light, I could see the outline of Caleb sleeping. He shifted, reaching for the empty space where I should have been. He was the only one who knew. He knew I wasn't a librarian.
He knew I wasn't weak.
He knew that beneath the quiet cardigans and silence, I was a shark. Months ago, he'd begged me to stop funding them, told me they would never change. I hadn't listened then. I was still wearing the chain. I wasn't anymore. I slid into bed. My heart was steady.
Calm.
No guilt. Just clarity. They wanted a reaction. They were going to get a foreclosure. 7 a.m. The sun hadn't fully crested the Los Angeles skyline when the assault began. My phone vibrated against the marble countertop. 17 missed calls. 42 texts. And now it was ringing again.
Sandra.
I answered on speaker while pouring my coffee. I didn't say hello. You ungrateful, spiteful little brat. Her voice screeched through the speaker, distorted and panicked. Do you have any idea what you've done? I took a sip. Good morning, Mother. I assume the bill wasn't settled to your satisfaction. Settled, she gasped. The card was declined. Declined. In front of the entire staff. In front of Bryce. I waited. We tried your father's platinum card, and the machine literally laughed at us. The manager came over, Mina. He looked at us like criminals. Do you know what it feels like to have a waiter pity you? I did. I'd felt it every time I wore thrift store clothes to their gala dinners. Every time they introduced me as the quiet one while Tiffany posed for cameras. It sounds like a cash flow problem, I said calmly. Perhaps you should have checked your balance before ordering the $12,000 vintage. Don't you dare lecture me on finance, she screamed. You cut us off. I tried to use the emergency fund for an Uber, and it was gone. You stranded us there. She lowered her voice, sharp and urgent. Bryce had to call his mother to Venmo him cab money. He's an influencer, Mina. He knows people. If this gets out. There it was. Not we miss you. Not why are you doing this? Just the terror of a stage actor realizing the spotlight's gone, and the audience can finally see the plywood set. Fix this, she demanded. Transfer the money now. And apologize to Tiffany. She's been crying all night. You ruined her networking opportunity. I hung up. Not blocked. Not yet. I needed the data. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I opened Instagram. And there it was. Tiffany's story. Posted 3 hours earlier. A black screen. White text. And the beginning of something she never thought would follow her. If you've ever been the quiet one carrying everyone else, stay with me. The next part is where things get exposed. Tiffany's story played out against a sad acoustic song. It's crazy how the people closest to you are the ones who want to see you fail the most. Some people can't handle your shine, so they try to cut your power. Jealousy is a disease.
Get well soon, sis.
Hashtags followed like confetti. Hashtag toxic family, hashtag rising above, hashtag haters gonna hate. I almost laughed. The gaslighting was breathtaking. She had reframed my refusal to be robbed as jealousy. As if my entire existence revolved around envying her ability to take selfies under rented chandeliers. In her mind, I wasn't a woman setting boundaries. I was a bitter extra trying to steal the spotlight. That's when the voicemail came in. For my father.
Jeffrey.
I pressed play. His voice was thick, slightly slurred. He'd been drinking. Mina, you listen to me, he said. I know who put you up to this. It's that husband of yours. That substitute teacher nobody. He's in your ear, isn't he? Telling you to hold out on your family. He paused, then spat the words like poison. He's a leech, Mina. A parasite. He sees a little money in your account and wants it for himself. You're letting a stranger destroy your bloodline. You fix this, or so help me God. I'll come down there and remind you who made you. I looked across the room. Caleb was sitting at the table, reading a tech journal on his tablet.
Calm.
Focused. Unbothered. He wasn't a substitute teacher. He was the founder of a learning platform valued at $900 million. He had anonymously bought my father's gambling debts 3 separate times, just to keep my childhood home from being firebombed by bookies. He was the only reason they still had a roof over their heads. And they called him a leech. Caleb looked up, catching the venom in the voicemail. He didn't get angry. He just smiled, sad, knowing. They're not mad they lost the money, he said softly. They're mad they lost their power over you. He was right. For 4 years, my family had operated on a simple premise. I was the resource. They were the management. Resources don't have opinions. Resources don't have boundaries. And resources certainly don't turn off the tap. But I wasn't a resource anymore. I was the chief executive officer of my own life. And I had just identified a massive liability. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't answer the texts. I didn't engage with the Instagram performance. To them, this was an emotional war. They wanted me loud, defensive, hysterical. They wanted me to react so they could rewrite the story in real time. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to liquidate. I stood up and smoothed down my blazer. It was time to go to work, not to the library, but to the glass-walled office downtown, the one where my real name was etched into the door. Ready?
Caleb asked.
No, I said, grabbing my keys. I'm overdue. I didn't block their numbers. Blocking would have been emotional, a reaction. Instead, I silenced the notifications. Strategy requires quiet. I got into my car and drove past the public library on 4th Street, the place my family believed I worked for 5 years. Stamping due dates. Organizing the Dewey Decimal System. It was a convenient fiction. It made me unthreatening. It made me easy to bully. Because in their minds, a librarian didn't have the resources to fight back. I didn't stop. I drove 3 blocks west to the glass and steel skyscraper that dominated the skyline. I pulled into the underground garage, bypassed the visitor lot, and slid into the spot marked reserved. Taking the private elevator up to the 42nd floor, I felt the shift happen in my body. The hunched shoulders straightened. The apologetic expression vanished. I wasn't Mina, the disappointment, anymore. And when the elevator doors opened, the woman stepping out wasn't coming to explain herself. She was coming to authorize something irreversible. The elevator doors opened directly into the lobby of MV Holdings. My name, my real name, sat clean and understated on the wall behind the reception desk. The receptionist looked up and nodded. Good morning, Miss Vane. Elena is waiting for you in conference room B. Elena wasn't a family lawyer. She didn't hand out tissues or talk about healing conversations. She was a corporate shark, hostile takeovers, asset liquidation, leverage. She didn't deal in feelings. She dealt in consequences. When I walked into the conference room, she was already there. Files stacked on the mahogany table with military precision. I saw the transaction logs, she said, eyes still on her tablet. You terminated the housing allowance. Aggressive. It wasn't aggressive enough, I said, taking the seat at the head of the table. They think this is a tantrum, that I'm just holding my breath until they apologize. I leaned forward. I need them to understand the bank is closed permanently. Elena slid a document across the table. Then we don't send a letter, she said. We send a notice of debt acceleration. It wasn't a Dear Dad note. It was a legal demand. Every loan I had quietly purchased. Every credit card balance I had consolidated. Every lease I had underwritten to keep them comfortable. For years, the terms had been soft. Family terms. 0 interest. Pay when you can. But buried in the fine print was a clause Elena had insisted on years ago. The lender reserves the right to demand full repayment of the principal balance at any time, for any reason. Total principal, $5.2 million. If we execute this, Elena said calmly, they have 30 days to pay in full. If they fail, we move to asset seizure. House. Cars. Any wages they might actually have. I ran my finger over the number. $5 million. That was the price of my silence. What it had cost to keep them comfortable while they treated me like staff. Do it, I said. Draft it. Serve them tomorrow. This is the nuclear option, Elena said, not unkindly. Once you send this, there are no more Sunday dinners. You won't be their daughter anymore. You'll be their creditor. I met her eyes. I haven't been their daughter for a long time, I said. I've just been their sponsor. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Caleb. Just got a voicemail from your dad. He threatened to come to my school and get me fired. Called me a broke loser corrupting his daughter. I stared at the screen. They were coming for Caleb now, the only person who had ever loved me without conditions. Another message followed. Take the gloves off, Mina. Drop the veil. Let them see who we really are. That was the signal. For years, we'd hidden his wealth to protect our peace. They had mistaken humility for weakness. I told Elena to send the courier package on company letterhead and redirect all correspondence to my office. I wanted them to see the logo. I wanted them to understand exactly who they had provoked. I was done managing their emotions. I had a business to run. Then Elena paused, scrolling. There's something else. She turned the tablet toward me. A second mortgage. 5 years old. $250,000. Taken out on the family home. The co-signer's signature was mine.
Perfectly forged.
But on the signing date, I had been in Tokyo. My father had used my credit to fund Tiffany's fantasy, Dubai trips, a G-Wagon, a lifestyle financed by fraud. If he'd defaulted, the bank would have come for me. This wasn't family drama. It was bank fraud and aggravated identity theft. Federal prison. Mandatory minimums. I didn't flinch. Prepare the police report, I said. But don't file it yet. I needed an admission.
Public.
Irreversible. I invited them to dinner at the Zenith Lounge. They arrived arrogant, overdressed, smiling. They thought this was my surrender. They ordered extravagantly, assuming, as always, that I would pay. When the check came, it didn't go to me. It went to Caleb. The waiter greeted him by name and asked him to review the deed transfer documents. Caleb signed casually. The bill was charged to the house account. That was when it landed. We didn't just own the debt. We owned the building, the restaurant, the land beneath their feet. I slid the folder across the table. The notice of debt acceleration. $5.2 million. Payable in 30 days. Beneath it, the forged loan application. I haven't reported this yet, I said calmly. You'll avoid prison, but you will lose everything else. Tiffany's influencer boyfriend left first. Status evaporates fast when there's no money behind it. 30 days later, they defaulted. I sent the eviction crew. Watched them move into a walk-up they once mocked. And standing there, I finally understood something. Their arrogance had always been rented. Without possessions, there was nothing underneath. We sold the house. Every dollar of recovered equity went into a scholarship fund for first-generation students, turning greed into opportunity. I deleted the last remaining folder tied to their names. Closed my laptop. For the first time, the prison door wasn't just quiet. It was unlocked, and I walked out. If you've ever had to buy your own freedom from the people who should have given it freely, you're not alone. If this story found you, leave a comment. I read everyone. Subscribe if you want more stories about quiet power, boundaries, and becoming untouchable without becoming cruel. And if someone needs this,
send it to them.
Sometimes freedom starts with knowing you're allowed to choose yourself.